welcome to the Unlock Your Limitless Potential podcast. I am your host, Amy Moore, also known as Amy Hates Carrots, and I am a transformational coach, a trainer of many subconscious, somatic, and energetic modalities, and a spiritual business mentor who is here to support you in quieting that darn carrot-chasing ego, aligning to what your soul is calling you to instead, and diving deep within to activate the limitless potential and wisdom that already exists within you now. On this podcast, you'll learn all about your inner world, how to create the reality that you want, how to make decisions that support your truest, most limitless self, and how to create positive and lasting change in your life and your soul-driven business. Thank you so much for being here today. Let's dive in, shall we? Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Unlock Your Limitless Potential. I am so excited to be joined by our amazing guest today, Ella Tsang. Ella is a Truth Embodiment Coach. She's a trainer of a handful of modalities, including NLP and everything Kundalini Yoga Teacher, Kundalini Activation Guide, and her work is all about guiding you to experience and embody and express the truest version of you, like who you truly are at your core and in your life and in your online brand or business. So Ella has been my guide, my mentor, my coach for almost a whole year now. And when I say that she embodies her work, like she takes it to a whole nother level than I have ever witnessed before. And it's so inspiring and so beautiful. Like she lives and breathes this work, this falling in love with you, falling in love with your life, and coming home to like the truest version of you, to the remembering of who you really are. So I am just so excited and so honored to have her and her gorgeous soul on the podcast today. Welcome, Ella. How are you?
Thank you so much, Amy. Oh my gosh, that intro is just spectacular. I feel like I need to hire you and just have you go with me everywhere I go and be like, yes, and now Amy will do the introduction. That's amazing. That's like better than how I say it.
It's so true though. Like you are just this glowing, radiating ball of light, and anyone who gets to like come in connection with that and cross your path, it's like their life is going to be changed in the most beautiful way. So I'm so excited for my community to get to know you better today. It's going to be the best.
Yay. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, welcome. So, there might be some people that are brand new to the world of Kundalini. And so I figured that's kind of where we could start, just by talking a little bit more about what it even is. So want to kind of do a little intro of it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So
Okay.
Kundalini, gosh, where do I even begin? I guess like the joke that I always make is that it's not some kind of pasta. I remember the first time I got into like Kundalini work. I think you probably remember me making that joke last year. I was telling all my friends all about like, oh, this Kundalini thing. They're like, what is it? Like linguine, like spaghettini, like some kind of pasta? I'm like, no, like this is life-changing stuff. So Kundalini at its core is the primordial creative energy. It's the energy that we all emanated from. It's the energy that created each of us. And this is the beautiful life force that lives inherently within us. It lives all around us. It animates all of life. It lives out there in the cosmos. It lives in the earth that we are grateful and blessed enough to live on. And also it lies within each of us. Kundalini is thought of to be the blueprint that originated our being, our humanity. And when we formed into a baby human and we came into this lifetime, naturally, I believe that in the beginning years of our life, our Kundalini is still relatively active. It's still like, okay, we know who we are, we know our true essence. But as we begin to grow up, as life starts to happen, as we start to grow into our teenage selves or adult selves, and we get conditioned into this world that tells us who we need to be and what we have to do, this energy becomes dormant. And so Kundalini, when dormant at the base of our spine, is like our potential, is that creative potential that when awakened will allow us to experience who we really are. And I always say that Kundalini is kind of like our spiritual partner in divine. Once she awakens, she brings us on this most beautiful path of liberation. She begins to purge and like pull through everything that is not true, everything that is not us. She frees up emotions and things that we have repressed throughout the years, the ways in which we have disconnected from ourselves, allow us to reconnect with our body and truly feel, and therefore really embody who we really are. Now, along this path, the path of liberation sounds incredible, but the real truth of the journey, as I'm sure you know, Amy, is that it's a lot of
It's not just like joy-filled moments. No, no, no.
it's a lot of crying. It's a lot of like self-crumbling, because the thing is that this life force, this dormant life force, when awakened, her intention is to help us purify ourselves, remember who we really are. And in remembering who we really are, it's like helping us merge that finite sense of self with the infinite. She is the bridge between our finite, I am human, I am who I am, this is my identity. She's that bridge between that identity and the infinite, which is I am all there is. I am what I am. I am this vast cosmic consciousness that created everything. And me, my small self, is just a small expression of that infinite consciousness. And so, on this journey, of course, in order for us to be able to really embody and experience that, there's very often what we call ego deaths and our personalities beginning to crumble, who we have thought we've been all our lives. And it can be a destabilizing process. But Kundalini, at the core, is this most beautiful, loving energy. She is also the radiance of the divine mother's love. She teaches us that we are enough as we are, that we deserve to be loved just for being, not by doing. And so it's really beautiful because she continues to deconstruct our sense of self and deconstruct all the different rules that we've learned about our worthiness, all the different things that, especially living inside of a toxic capitalistic society, we often think that my worth is based on how much I can produce, my value is based on how much money I make, how much success I have. But she really begins to stir it all up and shake us up to be like, wake up, you are enough, like you are perfect, you are divine as you are. And so that is Kundalini in a nutshell. She is us, she is our divine essence, she is an expression of you, she is not separate from you, she lies within you, she is you. And when she gets awakened, she just reminds us of the love that we are. And I refer to this energy as a she because Kundalini is divine feminine in nature. So being divine feminine in nature also means that she's creative, right? She's the one who gives life. She's the one who creates us and everything that is around us. But she's also the chaos. She's also the movement. She's also the fluidity. She's also the trust, the surrender, the love, the devotion. So that's a little intro on Kundalini. I mean, I could go on for hours.
Gosh, love it. So beautifully worded. Oh my gosh. Yes. And I love the metaphor that's always used, like the burning away of what isn't true. And just really, yeah, it's like you can see going through it in your own way, like how much you were clinging to these ideas or these programs or coding or whatever, and it's not really who you truly are, but like you're hanging on so tight, like I can't let go of this thing, and it's like this fire just comes through and burns it, like nope, that's not you, nope.
Bye.
Bye, peace out, nope, no longer here. Yes. So I love that so much, and oh my gosh, it's just so beautiful. Do you want to talk a little bit about like your journey of your own awakening and how that was for you?
Oh gosh, yes. I don't even know like exactly which specific point to begin at, because for myself, essentially over the last, what has it been? Like since last 6 to 7 years, I've been through like just a spiritual awakening journey. Before I had the word to refer to it as a Kundalini awakening, it was just a spiritual awakening for me. So ever since I was about 18, 19, something kind of started to emerge for me where I'm like, this can't be my life. Like this pain, this depression, this constant making myself wrong, this misery that I'm living in each and every day, regardless of how much success I have on the outside. At a young age, I had checked off all the boxes, 4.0 GPA, prestigious corporate job. But on the inside, I'm like, I am miserable. So something kind of started to kick in for me that's like, there's got to be something more, although I'm not really sure what it is. So about 2015, 2016, I started to meditate. I started to dive into Buddhism at first. And simultaneously, I was guided through a lot of different rock bottoms in my life. I had started, a very prestigious corporate job at L'Oreal. And long story short, I had made several pretty bad mistakes after being, thrown into a job that I wasn't prepared for that costed the company quite a lot of money. And so back then I had no tools to learn how to like love myself and have my own back no matter what. So that just really catapulted my shame spiral and created so much anxiety where it got to the point where one day, I'll never forget this. This was actually June 2017. I was having a salad at home, a shrimp salad, and all of a sudden I felt this pain in my chest, like a really sharp pain. And it also went to the back of my body as well. And I started to hyperventilate and I'm like, oh my gosh, am I having a heart attack? And I Googled WebMD and it's like, yeah, you're probably having a heart attack. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just like 21, like now. You know how
Oh
that goes.
no.
So I had to be sent to the hospital because I was going to pass out with how I was hyperventilating. I couldn't feel my body anymore. When I went to the hospital, I was immediately seen. And, when I kind of calmed down, that was the first time I had this spiritual guidance come through. And it was so clear. It was like, if you don't change your life, you're not going to make it. And we need you to make it. I will never forget, like lying there in the hospital bed, like everyone's like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with her? And I'm just there like having this like spiritual realization, like, wait, what? Who said that to me? But since that
Wow.
experience, I started to just follow the breadcrumbs, right? I went on Amazon. The first thing I got for myself was, I will never forget, a diffuser and eucalyptus essential oil. I'm like, all right, this
Okay.
is going to be the thing that first helps me. So I started smelling my eucalyptus and I started to buy a bunch of different books to explore what spirituality is and what's this whole thing about changing your mind and becoming aware of yourself. So I dove into that for a little bit, and simultaneously continued to go through more and more rock bottoms of being cheated on, of just falling into alcohol addiction, sex addiction, like literally everything that was bad for me. I was functionally depressed, which means that I excelled at work, but I could barely function on the weekends when I wasn't working. So yeah, it got to a very, very dark point. And at some point around, I think it was fall of 2018, all of a sudden the word Kundalini came into my awareness. And it's something that it's hard to even explain, but now in hindsight makes a lot of sense. But I remember maybe seeing it like on Facebook one day. And then I would get served like an Instagram ad about it. And then I would go outside and see a poster about Kundalini. And I got invited randomly one day to a dinner party and I met a Kundalini yoga teacher there. And she's like, oh, I do this thing called Kundalini yoga. Like, you have to come try out a class. I'm like, what is this? Like, but I've been seeing it everywhere. I'm like, okay, like I'll go. So I went to that studio and I went to my first Kundalini yoga class and just melted into a puddle of tears. I don't know what happened, but that was the first time like I felt bliss and peace in my being. And for someone who had struggled with depression and anxiety for the majority of my life, it was like, wait a minute, like, what is this? It was ephemeral, I felt it, but then it's like, okay, I'm back to my existing ways of being. But it did plant a seed for me as to what is possible. So since then, I started to follow, again, the breadcrumbs after breadcrumbs. I ended up going to that studio more regularly. I signed up for their next round of the Kundalini Yoga Teacher training. I was like, all right, I'm going to become a Kundalini Yoga teacher. And yeah, I just like literally followed the path. And so I started my teacher training at the end of 2019, I believe it was it? Yeah, I think it was at the end of 2019. And at that point, I had followed the nudge to quit my corporate job. I was just like, I can't stay here anymore. I did, 2 years straight of like intense Kundalini yoga practices. And the funniest thing was actually in the summer of 2020, that was when I actually had my first really visceral Kundalini energy experience. I've been practicing my Kriyas for 2 years straight, and I would feel good. I could see the ways that it was shifting my consciousness and my well-being. But for the most part, I was still like, I don't get it. I haven't felt the energy. And I was still actually holding on to a lot of trauma. And so the summer of 2020, it was July of 2020, I had been doing a 40-day Kundalini yoga practice up until then. And I was like invited to a cottage with my partner back then and his friends. And we did some psychedelic healing ceremonies there together. And oh my gosh, I will never forget that night that my Kundalini energy really awakened. It was like completely unexpected. It wasn't even like a planned like ceremony that we were going to do. We were just like after dinner, like, oh, maybe we should do one tonight. So yeah, I had some magic mushrooms, and it was done in a very ceremonial setting. And long story short was I was guided through a bunch of deep inner child healing. I started to feel my heart beginning to open to love and kind of see for the first time very clearly all the ways in which I haven't learned to love myself. And at a certain point, all of a sudden, there was a sharp surge of energy that I felt at the base of my spine. And it was just like I wasn't fully conscious, right? And I remember just beginning to scream. And my partner back then came to me. He's like, oh my gosh, like what's going on? Are you okay? I'm like, my Kundalini is awakening.
Like, what are you talking about?
And it's the wildest thing because again, I'm like, how did I know that? But I knew that,
You
like there was no
knew.
way that my human mind knew, but like my soul was just like, this is the moment. So that night was one of the most, gosh, life-changing nights of my life for sure. So once the energy began to move, it felt like I was just shaking from the inside out. There was so much energy running through my being. And I started to go through heat flashes and extreme cold. So it was really wild. Like all of a sudden, I would be burning so much that I'm like, okay, I have to take off all my clothes. And the next minute, I'm like shaking, my teeth are clattering, and I'm freezing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And that literally persisted for like 5 or 6 hours. So really intense energetic sensations. And at one point, I started to feel like the cosmos was running through my entire being. It's like vroom, vroom, vroom. And I put my hands together and I could feel like I could channel the entire cosmos through my being. And my then partner's friend who was there, he was moving through some things, and I felt guided to just put my hands on his head. And he had this crazy, Kundalini activation as well, just like through that energy transfer. And yeah, I started channeling and I started declaring myself as a divine feminine. And that was when that connection to the goddess opened up. And long story short, that was the summer of 2020. About a month or so afterwards, I found the path of surrender with Kundalini. So I found the feminine path. Up until then, I was practicing the masculine path of yoga and self-direction. I found the feminine path. I started receiving Kundalini transmissions for about 3-4 months at first. I worked with a mentor one-on-one to develop my energetic field, to clear everything out, because the moment that I found the path of Kundalini energy activation, something in my soul is like, this is what you're meant to do. And even a couple of months before that, in my first ever psychedelic experience, when I asked about my purpose, they told me, like my guides, my team told me that I'm meant to do a form of cosmic energy healing. They're like, use your hands. I'm like, what do I do?
These things, what?
Yeah.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so, yeah, just one thing after another. And then before I knew it, here I am,
Yes. I love it
So,
so much.
yeah, it was rough though. So many times of just like knees to the ground and surrender, like God, just like guide me, show me, like crying for months. Yeah, I had a really rough start to 2021. It was a lot of purging and trauma, years of grief, of sadness, just like all bubbling up that I had to sit with. But the liberation on the other side, the liberation and peace that I feel within my soul today, it's like there's nothing quite like it.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Thank you so much for sharing it. Oh my goodness. What a journey, Ella. That's amazing. And the roller coaster of it, though, that has led to now, and just your beautiful work in this world. So you mentioned the the feminine side of Kundalini, and that is what is so extra amazing about Ella, is that you can go take a Kundalini class and you are using chanting, you're breathing, you're doing movement with your body, you're making the shapes just like any other yoga, but different. And it's really great. It's just very structured. So it's like you are going through steps and you're following a lot of rules. And when she entered my world, it's like I was just shown this whole new way of it's like so hard to even put in words, but it's just a flow. Like it's what like a yoga flow should be, in my opinion. It's like you're allowing your body and your spirit, Kundalini energy to actually guide the process. And so any session, embodiment session, or even activation session I've done with Ella, it goes so much deeper than anything I've ever experienced because it's my body gets to be my healer. Like I get to be my own healer in that and not just go through these steps and motions from this like very masculine, structured, strategic approach. So it's very special, like her work in this world. And if you have never tried Kundalini, like this should definitely be the place to start is with her because it's going to be such a special experience. And yeah, just like all of the different things that we get to do. It's just like such a purging, releasing experience in whatever way is going to support you most. And it's changed my life, literally. So I'm just so
Oh,
grateful for you.
thank you for that. I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah, I think there's such a beauty to, like you said, allowing the healing to be a journey, allowing it especially to be an experiential journey, as opposed to a set of rules that you have to follow, as opposed to dogma, which is what traditional Kundalini yoga has been a lot like. It's like, you got to do it this way. You have to do it for this many minutes, this step. Otherwise, you've done it wrong. And you're like, like, I don't even want to get started then,
Yeah.
And what I found is that, as you mentioned, Amy, I don't believe that, yes, like sometimes I refer to myself as a healer, but I truly believe that we are all healers. And most importantly, we are our own activators. We are our own healers. This is why I always say, even in my activation work, it's like, yeah, it's called Kundalini activation, but I let people know, like, I'm not the one activating you. I'm not the one healing you. I am the one who is responsible for creating the conditions and the circumstances through which your healing, through which your own self-activation can become possible. Right. And in this way of healing, it is so liberating. It allows for that flow, like you said, and it allows for each person to have such a beautiful, one of a kind experience of their own healing that isn't by the book. Because a lot of the things by the book too, it's like, it's just one path for some people, but it's not applicable necessarily for everyone. And so when we just create the circumstances, we allow people to feel, to surrender, to allow, it's like their own unique healing journey gets to be created.
Yes, absolutely. Like nothing should ever be cookie cutter because like we aren't cookie cutter individual human beings. Like it just doesn't work that way. But it can work for some people. The structure does work for some people. I am not one of them. And I know that exactly why our paths crossed. And I'm so grateful. Oh my goodness. Just thank you so much for answering the callings, and it's so beautiful when people do that because like you don't like your human thinking logical mind like can't even make sense of what the heck is happening sometimes, and you just have to like trust so deeply at this whole new level. And it takes like I don't know, like a lot of courage, a lot of trust, a lot of like self trust in that process. So just thank you for doing the work in order to be able to be the person that's doing that. It's amazing. So, and then somewhere in there, in that like beautiful journey, the light language started coming through for you. Yes.
Yes.
How was that? I would love to hear about that too.
Yeah, for sure. So light language was something that I was always fascinated with since the beginning of my spiritual journey. I remember YouTubing different light language activations, listening to them and going like, okay, this is really cool. But there was always a part of my mind that was like, you're weird. Like, what is this? Stop listening to this. Like, what's going on? Like my mind, like, it's like trying to
Yeah.
catch up. Like, what's happening? The first time I actually started channeling light language was actually also through a psychedelic journey. And there's that beauty of psychedelic medicine supporting us on our spiritual path because it does close down some of the regular pathways of the conscious mind, right? So it allows new possibilities to unfold. And so for me in that journey, I remember just having a very powerful heart opening, tapping into that. And beginning to allow these frequencies and sounds to come out. It was extremely liberating and healing, and I could feel the healing that was happening for myself as I started to channel it. But it was difficult for me after that experience to integrate it into my conscious day to day, because so much judgment was arising within myself. I'm like, I can't share this. Like, this is just like my own little secret with myself of something that I do. And so at the end of 2021, it was actually funny because I connected with one of my past mentors, Melissa Bates, just right at the last couple of years when I started dabbling into light language, and she's a light language queen. And I remember her telling me from the get-go, like, you're a very powerful, like, healer, like, you're meant to work with light language. And I'm like, yeah, like, and she had told me, she was like, like, when you're ready, I'm here. And it was funny because in June, we had actually done like an Instagram live together, and she was doing the light language, and I was just like holding space and, sharing it with my audience. But it was funny because the moment that she started doing the light language, my whole body started to move. I was like, whoa.
Oh my God.
And she was laughing. She's like, like, it might be time soon. So, right, like, I kid you not, like 3 to 4 days before my 26th birthday, it was. So that was like at the end of 2021. I had this nudge that was like, you got to start working with Melissa now. So I went onto her page and I found that she was coincidentally enrolling for her Light Language Academy. And I sent her a message, and she's like, there's one more spot left. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, sign me up. And I will never forget, I sent her a voice note back in November of 2021 that was like, I don't know, Melissa, like, I'm feeling this like connection, like there's something that I'm meant to do between light language and Kundalini energy and Kundalini activation, but like, I'm not sure, but like, okay, I'm like, I'll just do it. And gosh, what can I say? So she started working with me and supporting me. A part of this program was one-on-one. So we would do these one-on-one sessions where she was guiding me to open my channel and practice speaking light language. And the amount of resistance I had, it was incredible. Like, I would hear the sounds starting to drop in, but my mouth's like, no, I'm not going to say it. So I would literally sit there for like 25 minutes, and she's like, anything coming through? No.
No.
And so, yeah, like, no, not doing it. So I had to clear out a lot of ancestral things, a lot of past life things that was really coming up. Like, it's not safe. It's not safe for you to do this. It's not safe for you to do this. Like, it literally equated to death in my being. And she was mentioning, like, definitely now, as the more that I connect with my ancestors, I can see the link that there were people in my lineage who try to do things like that. And especially in, ancient China, as a woman too, like female ancestors, if you try to do this, like, you're for sure. And so there was just a lot of fear around it, but kept on leaning into it, and working with Melissa kind of opened up my connection to my Egyptian past lives and connection as well. So I started working with goddess Isis, started working with the Rose lineage. And long story short is, like, the light language just came very organically through that. It really, I think, for me, it really became like this is a real thing when my dad got diagnosed with cancer last year, and I was brought home to, support him. And it was just like this open hearted space of healing of like, okay, whatever's meant to happen is going to happen. The light language came through, the holding space for his Kundalini activation. And when I saw how it was shifting him, and the funniest thing is, like, again, like, my parents have not been spiritual up until the past year, like 0% for the longest time. They're like, what are you doing with your life? And to like witness how when I do light language, my dad's body will move and he'll feel things, and he's like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this stuff is real. So yeah, that has led me till now. And when I started doing my Kundalini activations at first, I would kind of do light language silently in the back, so kept myself off mute. And I think you were probably there, Amy, like the day that I decided, I was like, by the way, everyone, today I will unmute myself.
I was
and that was a very powerful
happy.
moment.
Yes. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be even more powerful of an experience, because even if your mind can't understand what's being channeled, it's like your soul knows exactly what it is, and it is healing in like the deepest ways possible. And it's so, so beautiful. And I'm so glad you brought up your dad. You just got some really good news, right? About him.
Yes, yeah. So my dad is cancer free. He is all
Yay!
healed. He's all good.
Oh
And
my
it's just,
gosh.
yeah, like mind blowing to think back to like about exactly a year ago is when I got that phone call from my mom. She's like, Dad's diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. Like, you need to come home.
Mm.
And it was just like even just sometimes like I think I forget how much has happened in the past year because I'm like so in the motions of it. But the moment that she had called me was actually 20 minutes after I had graduated from a Kundalini bodywork training that I was doing. Yeah. 20 minutes later,
Wow.
we were still like cleaning up and celebrating. And I got a phone call. My mom's like, hey, like, I need to talk to you right now. And there was this full body knowing in that moment of, this is what I've been preparing for. So yeah, my dad is doing incredible now. He has more life to him than I've ever seen, like in, an entire lifetime that I've known him. And yeah, like it was really huge for him because what happened was, my dad had accumulated a lot of stress and anger and pain within himself, and he never had an outlet to know how to express that healthily. So that kind of led to the cancer. And last year was really this beautiful experience where I got to share with him what I do. I got to share with him everything that I've learned. And I could really see how all the work that I've been doing within myself to emotionally heal from my trauma has led me to that moment where I was able to live with my parents for 3 months and hold space for them, right? Hold space for my dad while we're sitting in the oncologist's office, and the oncologist is like, you might even be stage 4. Like, we don't know at this point, and we're not going to find out for like another 7 weeks. So nothing you can do. Just go eat healthy and exercise. I'm like, are you kidding?
Oh my
There was like
gosh.
zero understanding as to how to support the emotional and mental health of someone who's getting this really huge news. And this is where I started to explain like the quantum realm to my dad. And I told my dad, like, when it hasn't happened yet, anything can be possible. And in this moment, we have an ability to influence what's going to happen. If we decide that that's going to be the outcome, then that will be what happens because we decided it and we act in alignment with it. So yeah, last summer I introduced him to Joe Dispenza, and yeah, it held space for him and Kundalini activation journeys. At first, not really expecting anything to happen because that was really the first time I'd held space for someone in that way. And to
Yeah.
see him respond within the first 2 sessions, I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? But so beautiful. And today he's one of my biggest fans, which is so huge. I can't even like emphasize how big this has been because this is the same man who just, what was it, 3 4 years ago when I left my corporate job, sent me a message and was like, you're a mess, like you're doing shit in your life, like you better go figure yourself out. I don't know what you're doing, but you just threw away like the best opportunity you have in your life and you got to go figure out your shit. And I was just like, but now he and my mom are just like, we're so grateful you did what you do. Like,
Yes. And that goes back to that bravery. Like, it's a whole nother level when you are going like against, quote unquote, against the things that everyone around you believes to be true. And oh my gosh, I just like the whole time you're telling that story, I see your whole family in this lifetime, like, celebrating so much, but, like, just your entire lineage and just, like, every timeline, and everyone's just having, like, the biggest party, like, Ella did it. She followed, like, what the calling that she received, and she was brave enough to do so, and yeah, as, like, I've shared with Ella before, like, losing my own parents, like, how much, like, it would have been so amazing to be able to support them in that way with, like, the toolkit I have now. I just didn't have it yet back then.
yeah,
But it's also, like, you still have to be really brave to approach someone who has been telling you kind of the opposite forever just
yeah,
because that's just what they believe to be true, and so that takes a whole nother level of just, "All right, dad, here's what I'm gonna show you what I know," like, and look
yeah,
at the result that it bring to you guys, so I'm just,
yeah.
like, I'm celebrating you so much in that. I'm so happy for you guys.
Thank
It's so
you.
beautiful.
Yeah, like what you mentioned about the courage part is really huge because I remember when I first started my journey, like excited Ella in the beginning phases. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is so cool. You need to know this. Like we can change your minds, we can change your thoughts. And I was so shut down. Like my dad had literally told me like 3 years ago, like, don't impose your stuff on me. Like I don't care. I don't have time for this. And yeah, to sit with that and be like, okay, but I still believe in this. And for the last couple of years, I really took my space apart from my family. And I mean, with the pandemic, it was also difficult to travel back to Vancouver and see them. So I really had a lot of time to myself to really, embody this work so that when I did bring it to them in the past year, it was no longer from this intellectual, like, oh, you should know this. Like, this is really cool. But it's like, I know what I'm talking about. And they're
Yes.
like, okay, we believe you.
Yes, and thank goodness you did. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, Ella.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of that, do you want to kind of talk a little more about like Kundalini activation sessions specifically?
Mm-hmm.
And then also, you just led your activation training in Hawaii, which your parents went to with
Yeah.
you. Oh my gosh, it looks so beautiful. I can't wait to go to the next one.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you want me to dive into like what it is, like how, like what it entails?
Yeah. Just yeah, so people can know like maybe the difference of what
Mm-hmm.
maybe the embodiment practices are versus like the actual activations.
Yeah, for sure. Beautiful. Yeah. So as I mentioned, when working with Kundalini, we have the two paths, as we call it. We have the right hand path, which is the masculine path, which is about self direction, which is this idea that I'm doing something for an effect. I am doing my breath of fire. I am moving my body in this way, or I am meditating and focusing on a mantra in order to help me activate my energy. So that is the right hand path, also known as the masculine path. On the contrary, we have the feminine path, which is the path of surrender, which is the complete opposite in that the awakening, the activation happens not by you consciously doing something, but actually by you just allowing. So, this is built on the belief that, again, Kundalini is already inherent within us. And the only reason why we have not fully experienced it and the reason why she is dormant is because there haven't been the conditions through which she has the space to freely flow. And so, just kind of looking at the greater context first, I want to reemphasize that it's not one path is better than the other. It's not like, oh, I only go masculine or I only go feminine. The whole point of Kundalini in a Kundalini awakening is the return back to that infinite consciousness. And in the return back to the infinite consciousness, there is the return back to wholeness within self first. The wholeness within self is about the merging of two opposite ends of polarities, meaning that we have to join our personal inner masculine and inner feminine. So this is why in my approach, I love to weave the two together in the two interweaving serpents, as we know, the Ida and the Pingala, the masculine and the feminine, the yin and the yang, as we call it in Chinese culture as well. We need these two energies to work together in order to actually create a stable foundation for Kundalini to rise, for Kundalini to continue her process in the body. So when it comes to specifically in the energy activation sessions, what can often happen on the outside when we're watching a video, when we are even experiencing it for ourselves, it feels a lot like magic. It's like, oh my gosh, like I just laid there doing nothing. And then all of a sudden my body's moving, my body's shaking. I'm having like astral traveling journeys. Like what's going on? So I can actually break that down on a very simple scientific level as well as to what's actually going on. So within our body, we have our nervous system, as we know, and we have the two separation between the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is our nervous system that we often associate with rest and digest, with calm, safety, I'm good, right? So the parasympathetic nervous system, when we actually look at the masculine and feminine lens, represents the feminine, right? It's that ability to slow down and be like, okay, I breathe, I flow, everything's good. Now, on the flip side, the sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight, I got to make sure I'm okay. It's the survival. And so, what happens is that these two nervous systems are also associated with the primary energies that we experience in our body, which is known as electricity and magnetism. Electricity is associated with Kundalini. As we know, when Kundalini begins to move, it's electric, it's like fiery, it's dancey, exactly. And the magnetism, it's more of that heaviness, it's more of the gravity, it's more of like that third dimensional I got to move through things linear. That's the magnetism. So what happens in our day-to-day, especially the way that our societies are designed, is that we're highly inner sympathetic, and it's not our fault, right? But the way that we have the pressures of, I got to be successful, I got to make enough money to pay my bills, I got to make sure that I'm good, I got to take care of my family, I got to do this, I got to do that, oh my gosh, I'm stressed. That puts us in a sympathetic state. When we're in a sympathetic state, that means that the natural energy balance in our body is that it's higher magnetism and lower electricity, right? So that is where the left brain becomes more dominant, the logical thinking. The left brain is also associated with the masculine, right? So this is where people often say, I overthink a lot, I'm a logical person, I'm a rational person, just gotta like find the answer, gotta figure it out. Kundalini, on the other hand, is the feminine. It's the right brain, it's the creativity, it's the intuition, the movement, the trusting. So in these activations, primarily, you know, from a scientific perspective, what we are doing is that we're creating the primary circumstances through which the parasympathetic nervous system can be activated in a loving and safe way. So this is where in these activation journeys, we have everyone lie down, close their eyes, put on an eye mask, which in and of itself is a radical thing to do because we normally never do this aside from Shavasana or going to sleep. It's like, we won't just be like, yeah, let me just take an hour out of my day to just lie down and do nothing. Like, what? So when we allow people to just lie down, even something shifts in their body, right? So already that like heavy magnetism, sympathetic nervous system response can start to decline. And the moment that it declines, because again, this is masculine and feminine imbalance, when masculine goes down, then the feminine has a space to rise. Then that's where the potential of Kundalini awakening, the potential of experiencing your true self begins to arise because there's a space for that, right? When the left brain is constantly boom, 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 I'm here, the right brain doesn't have space to come up and say, let me just move into my creative power. So when the left brain kind of calms down a bit by just lying down, we begin to have that space for the right brain to be activated. Now, along in these journeys, what's also being created as a circumstance to support people in opening their Kundalini energy is brainwave shifting sound. So the way that we design our playlist is very intentional by bringing in all the different brainwaves. So we've got our slowest brainwaves, our delta, we've got our thetas, our alphas, our betas, which are the faster brainwaves. And what was discovered by the inner dance, which is where this work originated from a man named Pai Villaraza, is that this shifting of brainwaves in the music actually induces an altered state of consciousness that is very similar to trance, almost like in hypnosis, where we're primarily in theta, but here we kind of cycle through all the different brainwaves. And this altered state of consciousness creates what is called the dreaming awake state. So the dreaming awake state is where you are kind of in the in-between. You're like, I'm kind of asleep, but I'm also awake and I kind of am aware and like boom, boom, boom. And this, you know, going back to yogic terms, when we actually look at the 5 koshas, we know that at the core in the bliss sheath of the 5 koshas, that's where Kundalini lies. And the way that we actually enter in to meet Kundalini is by entering into a dreaming awake state, where the conscious mind is no longer super loud and present, but there's that lucidity, that fluidity that becomes possible. So that's the second factor that we hold in order for these activations to take place. The third thing that happens is that there is an energetic resonance that is being held. So this is where, again, to be a facilitator, it has a lot more to do with us actually embodying our own Kundalini frequency and being courageous in our healing journey, as opposed to learning something new to do. Yes, there are different practices and things to, you know, bring into your practice as a facilitator, but so much of it is, are you willing to walk the Kundalini path for yourself? Because that's the only way that you can hold that frequency of the energy and actually connect with it from the cosmos, from the earth, and bring it into resonance in a shared space. The way that the Kundalini frequency works is that it's like a tuning fork. So we as the facilitator will bring in like a frequency of Kundalini and go like, ding! And then that reverberation, right, will ripple into the people in the room, and whatever is ready to be awakened and moved within them, they'll start to vibrate. And then the energy begins to awaken inside of them. What's also actually happening simultaneously, as I'm discovering now, is that there is also, in a sense, a transmission of vital life force energy. So we call this prana or chi. In Taoism, we call it qi. In traditional Hinduism and the Vedic teachings, we call this prana, the life force. And what's happening is that prana and chi is necessary for Kundalini to do her work, because Kundalini is a form of consciousness, right? Kundalini energy, what is actually the energy part, is chi, is prana. So in order for Kundalini to actually have the vehicle to move through someone's body and to purify and open, there's got to be enough prana in the body, which is also why that masculine path is so important, right? Being able to know how to do your breathwork practices, being able to do your kriyas, that's naturally going to enhance the flow of prana and chi in your body and actually create the necessary nervous system foundation for Kundalini to continue her process. So that's what's happening in the activations. Is you lie down, you put on an eye mask, you relax, music is being played, it just sounds like good songs, but simultaneously you're being brought into an altered state of consciousness. The very act of lying down will activate your parasympathetic nervous system. There is a frequency of Kundalini brought into the space that will serve you in resonance to activate what is ready to be activated. And yeah, there's also a transmission of life force that then supports you in moving through emotional blockages and helping you liberate yourself. So that's a little crash course on what
Yes.
happens in activations.
I love it. Thank you so much for all of that. It's like so beautiful to connect all the dots together of the two sides and how it's so important. And like, yeah, the capacity that your nervous system can hold is going to like propel forward or activate even deeper the activations because you are working with both parts of yourself. So, yeah, that's so amazing. I love it. And yeah, I attend these every month with Ella, and she currently is offering like 2 live a month right now.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, you definitely should give them a try. You can join just like a la carte or join her in the Kundalini temple as well.
Yes.
And it's such a special experience. And it's like such a gift that you can give yourself to just like surrender so deeply and just be present. Like there's no wrong
Mm-hmm.
way to do anything. You're just showing up for yourself in a new way. And you're just like allowing whatever happens to happen because it's going to be the most supportive thing that you need in that moment in time. So yeah, it's very special experiences. So I'm really glad that you dove deep with those because I think everybody in the world needs Kundalini in their life. It would just like
Oh, yes. It would
be
change
such a better
everything.
place. It would change everything. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
even just like your perspectives and your level of patience and the love you have for yourself and everything that just makes you a more kind, loving, compassionate human being. It's like you're doing that for you, but you ultimately are doing it for everyone around you as
Yeah.
well. And then you have evidence of these amazing stories like Ella's dad, where like you are healed from so much like dis-ease inside of your own
Yeah.
body and how powerful and profound that can be. So yeah, it's just beautiful. Like, thank you so much for sharing, Ella.
Thank you.
So what else? Because I could talk to you all day forever. What do you have coming up? You have a new program that is coming out. Will you
Yes.
tell us about it?
Yes. Yes. So I have a new program that is starting in about 2 weeks' time. Oh my gosh, time is flying by, and it's called Frequency. And Frequency is all about the art of befriending our discomfort, which is such a
Mm.
different program in and of itself. It's really funny because I recall everything I've learned about online business and what you should sell and like how you should market things. And I know the number one thing that I was told is like, first of all, you can't sell a program teaching people how to feel a certain way. It's like no one's going to buy that. And second of all, why would you sell a program about discomfort? No one's going to sign up. Nobody's going to care. Who would want to sit with their discomfort? You should sell them something shiny, right? So I'm on a mission to like really reinvent the space. And so much of it, as you know, Amy, is about the truth. And the truth is, there's no way that we can truly embody what we call like a higher frequency or the frequency of your desires without knowing how to hold discomfort. Discomfort is first and foremost like the biggest thing that we are afraid of. And there are so many different forms of discomfort in the forms of pain, of potentially getting hurt, of potentially being rejected, of sadness, the discomfort of running into scarcity, the discomfort of being disappointed, the discomfort of success, the discomfort of being stretched and going like, oh my gosh, am I going to be okay? Is this going to work out? The discomfort of the unknown. There are so many different discomforts that we've never actually ever been taught how to have a relationship with. And so by default, what happens is that we shame ourselves for first and foremost experiencing the discomfort. We're like, oh, I'm just not good enough. Oh, I'm just not brave enough. Oh, I just haven't figured out my stuff. Otherwise, I wouldn't have this discomfort.
Yeah.
All the while completely not realizing that discomfort is the very evidence that our nervous system is doing its job. Right? Our nervous system is so intelligent, and the discomfort that we feel is literally, I always say it's like the guard with the binoculars, like, danger, danger, danger. Oh my gosh, you might die. Don't do it. That's discomfort. And so when we don't know that and we make the discomfort mean something about us, then it's really difficult to be able to commit to the things that matter to you. And, it breaks my heart so many times whenever I hear people say like, oh, I'm just a self-sabotager. I just mess things up. Like, oh, like I can't have what I want. It's my fault. Like, I'm just so scared. Or, like, I don't know why I can't do this. And all the while I'm there just like, if only you knew unconditional love, if only we can set a new context for discomfort, which is that it's not something that is taking away from you, but it's actually something that you get to choose to have a different relationship with. So anyways, that's what my new program is about. It's called Frequency. It's all about showing all of us how to sit with discomfort and have a new relationship with it. It's not about getting rid of discomfort, because as long as we're in here, you're going to feel it in your life. And even after you overcome, quote unquote, overcome the initial discomforts that your mind's like, oh, I just have to get rid of my fear of being seen. I just have to yada, yada. There will always be something else. Always. Because your brain is constantly like, oh my gosh, that's not okay. Oh my gosh, danger, danger. So this program is teaching us how to be okay with all of our humanity. And truly, I believe that when we learn to be okay and we learn to love our humanity, that is how we actually embody that high frequency that everybody always teaches about. So yeah, that's up and coming.
Oh my gosh, amazing. And where can people like find you and sign up for this? Because it's so needed.
So you can come find me on Instagram at PSMella. That's where I hang out the most. You can also join my Facebook group, the Truth Alchemy Collective. But these days I'm mostly just on Instagram. It's kind of like my fun place to be. So I make posts almost every single day. I'm always on the story. So you can check that out. You can also go to my website, psmella.com. There are all the different Wonderland attractions, as I call it, in my brand that you can come check out and discover.
Yay, awesome. Okay, Ella, and then like what are you excited about that's coming up? I've been seeing you like dive deeper into like your beautiful roots and just like discovering some amazing things there, which I'm celebrating you so much in that, by the way. Are you just having fun playing there? Like, what are you up to?
Yes, I love that question. There's so many things I'm excited about. Connecting with my ancestors and connecting with my roots has been a really big priority for me. And it's interesting because like I didn't even realize how important this is, especially when I talk about embodying our true selves, right? Like that is a part of my true self. And I think for a very long time, I fought against it. I was like, no, like I'm not Chinese. No, like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to be connected to that. But it's been such a liberation to reconnect to my heritage and my lineage and be like, wait a minute, there's actually a reason why I'm called on this path. And something that was really clear for me is that, there's Bella. Something that's really clear for me is that, the work that I'm guided to do, like, yes, it's guided on a soul level because my soul has had the many lifetimes of trainings and experience, but also I chose to incarnate in this body, in this family, in this lineage for a reason. So I'm uncovering that there are definitely so many of my ancestors who have been doing similar work back in the day, back in China, many ancestors who were probably practicing in secret because it wasn't allowed. And so, just diving into more the Taoism roots and kind of finding the similarities, it's been really cool to actually see how naturally the Taoist principles mirror what I've naturally started to teach without realizing it. And then I'm like, oh, emotional alchemy? Yeah, it's the same thing. Or like, oh, yin and yang, and like that merging of two sides of duality back into one. Like, yes, I was talking about that. So it's been really cool to kind of see all those different connecting points, and just sitting with my ancestors and practicing, qigong with them. That's the beautiful thing after opening your Kundalini body and being very connected here, is that you can literally play a song, connect with ancestors, and boom, like they come in and they teach me through my body, which is so cool because my mind's just there like, okay, I guess I should just take notes. It's the wildest thing, because normally we think like the mind is the one initiating the movement, but this is purely like, okay, here's the movement. I'm like, okay, what does this mean? Okay, we're gathering chi. Okay, gathering chi. And then you like write it down, it's like, what?
Wow, that's amazing. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love
So
that so
doing
much.
that, yeah, and also in-person events too is a really big thing for me. I just sold out my first like big in-person event in Montreal for this weekend, so that's really cool. And I'm really feeling that call for just human to human connection and bringing this work to my local community, even throughout Canada, because surprisingly, there's very few people in Canada who actually facilitate this work. I think there's like 3 people, including myself. So it's
Wow.
really untapped here.
Yes, that there's definitely a need for that for everywhere, but that is really cool that you are there right now in this time in
Yes.
history. Oh my gosh, so needed. Oh my
Yes.
gosh. Well, thank you so much for sharing. That's so beautiful. And just hearing about your whole journey. And oh my gosh, we could geek out all day and talk about Kundalini all day.
Yes.
But thank you so much with my whole heart for being here and like for the work you do and for walking your talk so much. It's the most inspiring, most empowering thing to witness. And yeah, the people that don't know you yet that will, it's like, I know that they thank you too because you are absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy. I love you. This is
I
such a beautiful
love you.
conversation. Thank you.
And we will chat soon.
Chat soon.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you have enjoyed this episode, I would be so dang grateful if you shared it with others, subscribed to this podcast, and left an awesome review. You can also connect with me anytime on your favorite social platform at Amy Hates Carrots, or visit amyhatescarrots.com for all of my latest offers and free goodies that will help further support you on your journey. And just as a reminder, you, my dear, are truly limitless, and every single thing that you need is already within you now. You get to choose at any moment to live as the truest version of you and come home to the remembering of your unlimited power. I love you and your gorgeous soul so much, and I hope that you have a limitless day.